But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Reid. The Super Mac and Gibbo show. Super Mac is okay, he's still no change, waiting for the operation, and me and Gibbo are still ploughing a lone furrow, but we've always got time to chat about Newcastle. Good evening, John.
How are you, my friend?
Very good. Just want to say well done, mate, on a great night on Friday. I mean, we had a cracking turnout, didn't we? Just over 1,100 Newcastle fans packed the Tyne Theatre for an evening with the entertainers, John. I'm sure you got as much enjoyment out of talking to the lads and hearing the stories as the lads and lasses did in the crowd.
I did. It was absolutely fabulous. There was 13 of the lads, as you well know, and the fact that there were 13 of the 14 made it when it was the biggest storm for how long? Particular night. And we had a load of crazy stories about people being redirected. Lee Clark coming back from his son's match in Real Madrid, and Killer Kilcline and a few of the lads having to come up by train. Liam O'Brien, I mean, he must have gone around the world twice with all these diversions, and he arrived in the middle of the show or something. But they were all determined to be there. Fun guys. And there's still a yardstick by which the modern Newcastle United are judged, Steve, because their back-to-back finishes in the Premier League still stands as the beacon, even though it's 30 years ago. So it was absolutely terrific. Good night.
Yeah, great night. Thanks everybody for coming. Of course, John will be comparing the Les Ferdinand event at the City Hall in April. Get your tickets for that from ticketmaster.co.uk. Okay, departures. No incomings at the moment. We'll come to that. But departures. Miguel Almiron has finally jetted off back to Atlanta, from where he once came, with his family. Lovely photograph circulating of him and his wife and child on the plane, heading back over there. And a good deal financially. I mean, Mitchell getting a bit of criticism and stick from Newcastle fans for not having anybody come in. But that's a decent deal for Miggy, and he's been a good servant over the years, John. And I'll always hark back to our dear friend Malcolm saying, well, you know, he plays with a smile on his face, but, you know, if you left the doors open at the Gallagher, I think you and him used to say the same thing. He runs that much, he'd end up running down Barrack Road. So I'm not sure what you're going to say, but I mean, a decent servant, John. Seen better, but you've seen worse.
Yes, I mean, you've got to love the guy. I mean, that smile alone lit up the place. It didn't need floodlights at St. James's Park. They just got Mickey to stand and smile. And you could see everything. He was terrific. He was very pacey, very quick. I think he sometimes was too quick for his own good. He lacked a little bit of creativity. He gave 100% every time he pulled on his shirt. Not the greatest goal scorer we've ever had. I mean, it took him 27 games to get his first goal. I think he went from January to Christmas. Can you imagine that? I mean, that's drier in the Sahara Desert, that. And he just couldn't score, bless him. And he had one outstanding season of scoring goals when he got 11 and we qualified for the Champions League. But outside of that, he wasn't a finisher. but he was full of enthusiasm. He was desperately quick. He was always willing to give a hand going backwards as well as frontwards to help his fullback. Yeah, he's one of those blocks, isn't he? We all need blocks to get to where we are, building blocks. And, we've just been talking about the entertainers. One of the entertainers on the night, Killer Klein, was part of the building blocks. Kevin Keegan always said without Killer, there wouldn't have been the entertainers, because if we'd gone down to the third, it wouldn't have happened. He kept up and helped us build. Miggy was here in the bad old days of Ashley and Steve Bruce, etc., etc., and he was a steadying influence in those days. But he gets overtaken, like everybody does. The time had come for him to go, but he goes with all our good wishes, all our thanks for everything he did for us. But it was the right time for Miggy to go, and he's going back to where he loves to feel loved, and he felt loved at St James's Park, and he certainly loved it at Atlanta as well.
Yeah, certainly did. Wish him all the best. Denise says Miggy gave everything he absolutely had to give. Give us an amazing purple patch. I'm right. He scored our first Champions League goal. Miggy gave us his best. Bluer Than Boy says we're still waiting for Mitchell's new and improved strategy to come to fruition. I understand the PSR issue, however, he should have been more respectful in his previous comments, and he has proven himself. Okay, so let's get a few of these questions that are coming in. Well, Tom just wants to keep on Miggy for a second. He says, what's your favourite memory of him, and do you have a favourite goal that you can recall, John?
That's interesting. I mean, the standout thing he'll be remembered for, scoring our first goal in the Champions League, of course. But I mean, when you look back, every goal looked virtually the same, didn't it? He cut inside from the wing, took it on his left foot, and curled it into the far top corner. I mean, it was almost a replica. It was like a Groundhog Day. It was rerun, rerun, and rerun. That's the way he played. I just think his boundless enthusiasm, particularly early days when we needed that, the balance he gave us right and left, and the concern I've got about him leaving is the obvious one. One goes out, nobody comes in, and nobody will come in, believe you me, before the Monday deadline. No senior player will come in. I'm not talking about age group players. And that being the case, you can actually say, that this transfer window, when we're going for the Champions League and the Carabao Cup, maybe the FA Cup, but certainly we're in the semi-final ready for Wembley in the Carabao Cup, and we're for a Champions League position at the end of the season. We've actually weakened the squad physically, numerically, because we've got rid of a senior player and brought no one in. And what it means, and why I feel a little bit apprehensive, Steve, is it means we've got one outside right, and that's Jacob Murphy. The only outside right we've got. Yes, you can move Gordon across. You can use Bonds when he's fit again. But this is mix and match. We've got one orthodox outside right between now and the end of the season, and we're fighting in 3 competitions: Premier League for Europe, Carabao Cup, hopefully the final, and the FA Cup. We're spreading the butter very thin on the toast.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people are asking you in the chat. Barry says, will Mitchell come out and explain why he's done nothing again? The fans deserve it. Yvonne says, Steve, John, do you feel slightly worried about the lack of incoming players this window, a stateless in the state of the team and exhaustion creeping in to derail the ambition? And of course, we have lost another player, although not somebody in the senior squad, somebody who was anticipated to potentially progress him. Jamie Miley is off to Hartlepool, not on loan, but a permanent deal, John. So it's in that player going out, a local lad. I'm not sure what the deal was for him, but thoughts.
There was no deal, Steve. It's a free transfer. It's a free transfer. So there's no financial gain. What his contract is up at the end of the season, and they've just allowed him to go. I mean, the worry for me is our first team, when everybody is fit, in my opinion, is fabulous. And 10 wins out of the last 11 matches, would back up that judgment. Where we're in trouble is the bench. Sometimes it looks quite strong, but is it really? For example, on the bench at the moment, I think that you look at Sean Longstaff. He looks as if he's got all the cares of the world on his shoulders. He looks as if he knows his time's going to be up. He'll be the next one after Miggy to reluctantly leave. I don't mean January, I mean the summer. He doesn't want to go. He looks as if he's got the cares of the world on his shoulders. He's not playing well when he comes on. Willock is a shadow of himself. I mean, I don't know why. He's a very talented lad. He's been hampered by injuries, but he looks a shadow of himself. Asula is a bane. Harvey Barnes is out with an injury, but hasn't justified 38 million, in my opinion, Steve, despite the goals that he has scored. Kelly is still justifying being signed. I know it was a free transfer, but it was for big wages, and he still has to justify that. You look at the bench, the only hope we've got is we've got Pope back, which is an advantage. We've got Botman back, and Lewis Smiley looks as if he's fit and raring to go. They're pluses, but the bench is very, very thin. And we're only one injury away from a catastrophe. We've got one outside right now, which is Jacob Murphy. We've got one centre forward now, which is Isaac, if you accept that Callum Wilson's habitually injured. And I then think about playing without Gordon or Bruno or Tonali when we're trying to go in the Champions League, or playing without any of those three in the Carabao Cup final. Please God, we get there. So I'm not raining on our parade. The first team is absolutely outstanding. That's why we've won 10 out of 11. But we haven't got depth. And if we make the Champions League, there's a lot of work to be done in the summer to give us that depth.
Yeah, I would agree with you, John, 100%. Other questions coming in, all with regards to transfers and stuff like that. If we don't sign anyone in January, says Darren, do you think this will cost us our chance of hitting the top 4, John?
It could easily. I mean, we don't know. If we got lucky, and I'm not talking about luck with results, I'm talking about luck with injuries. If we got lucky, our team is good enough to take us through the second half of the season. But how lucky can you expect to get? If we get an injury to one of the blue chip players that's lengthy, as the injury was to Botman, as the injury was to Pope, if we get that with Tonali or Isaac or Gordon or Bruno, the whole complexion of the team changes. I'm on the crest of a wave at the moment because we've won 10 of the last 11. We, outside of the Bournemouth game, we look terrific. We look vibrant. We look to have power. We're press high. We've got loads of energy. We look a quality team. But you tell me, Steve, every time we've had a game won like Wolves or whatever, and we had 3-0, we bring subs on. Every time we brought subs on in the second half, we've lost our way, haven't we? The team's lost their impetus. It hasn't lifted the team, the substitutions, so that we can go again. We've lost our impetus. We've lost our way. We've been in a position where we could do that because we had the games won. But it's a worrying factor. And to ignore it is to ignore the obvious and to ignore the truth. We are skating on very thin ice.
100%. Yeah, a lot of people talk about Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson can't be considered as an option if we don't sign a player or two. Then it's curtains. Denise's starting 11 are absolutely top draw, but agreed injuries is my biggest fear. Craig says, I've been saying if our first 11 stays fit, I think we can finish second. We're only 6 points of Arsenal, and they really are stuttering. They've got injury problems as well, has to be said. Roger says, lucky with injuries, John, is a massive statement. We all know that and agree. And Jeff says, Bournemouth at the moment are playing like a team possessed. Next question, Tupa Joy. Lots of talk about training grounds since we last spoke, John. But, the ground again is like a bone of contention with a lot of fans. Just a simple question from Tupa Joy. Does John think we will stay at St James's Park or we will relocate?
It's a great, great question, isn't it? Because we're getting nothing out of the club to indicate strongly one way or another. I think the same as you, probably, Steve. if we relocate, I want that to be measured in old-fashioned yards, not
Yeah.
in miles, because we've got to stay basically as the cathedral on the hill, whether we've moved slightly or not. I would just, and I know these things take time, and yes, they do, but we could do with some clarification, couldn't we? But I mean, I would like, and I guess I'm being greedy, but I like an open house and an open book from the club. I would like the club to tell us where we are with the training ground and where we are with the stadium, and I would like them to tell us where we are precisely in their mind on financial fair play, how it works in their mind, what the books are like. I know we are more restricted than Manchester United and Arsenal and Liverpool, who have had years at the honeypot and have got a much more a bigger leeway than us. I know they're restricted, but clubs that are historically huge and then suddenly coming on the scene are persecuted. You look at what's happened with us. We can't buy. I mean, Houdini had more wiggle room than Newcastle United have got, and he was bound tight and chucked in the river. We've got no wiggle room whatsoever. And Aston Villa, who are in exactly the same position, Steve, what do
Hmm.
they have to resort to? They've got to resort to selling and are to selling the big players. They sold Luiz last summer, remember, to Juventus, and they're selling Duran now for about 64 million to the Saudis. Now, yes, that gives them, because they get that money, and they've spent the Luiz money very, very well. But will they do it again with Duran? And I know he's only the number 2 striker, but crikey, getting rid of a man that's scoring a pile of goals for you. What they've done over 2 windows is the equivalent of us selling Isaac and Gordon, which
Yeah.
is would set us. We would be up in arms, Steve, if we did that, and I
And
would be
Arsenal put a cheeky bid in for Watkins as well the other night.
because you know why? Because they know, Steve, that this club is willing to bite the bullet because they're in such dire straits. They're willing to bite the bullet and gamble that we can use that money and get 2 or perhaps 3 quality players at a slightly different price and still go on, as Aston Villa proved by making the Champions League and then doing well in the Champions League this season. They've gambled, and so far the gambles come off. Will selling Duran and reinvesting the money come off? But can you imagine that if that happened to Newcastle, Villa
Yeah.
have done the equivalent of selling Isaac and Gordon?
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy. It really is. PSR is ruining football. It's
Oh,
certainly not helping clubs like Newcastle and Aston Villa who are wanting to challenge the top 6. It's setting us back. It really is. Keith says Peter Silverson's been with us for 27 months. Will new sponsors be brought in to help us in the summer? I mean, that's $1 million question, Keith. Really, isn't it, John? Because that's what he was brought in to do. Yet we seem to be dragging our feet or unable to attract the big names.
you see, this is what I keep coming back to, Steve. We've got the best fans in the world. Why? Because we're the greatest supporters of failure this country has ever seen in football terms. 1927, the league, domestic trophy 55, any trophy 69. And we're still packing the ground out to watch Newcastle play. We are either absolutely crackers or the best supporters in the world. And I like to think it's the latter. But we need some sort of guidance. Silence is not golden. Whoever coined that phrase, I could strangle them because Newcastle are living by it, and it's not golden. And I'll tell you one example of why it isn't, if I may, Steve, in my opinion. When Newcastle had the audacity to sell one of their blue chip players, like we've talked now that we might have to do, we could have had to do with Isaac or Gordon or Tonali, like Aston Villa have just done. We did that way back in the 90s. We sold Andy Cole to Manchester United. He just scored 41 goals in a season for us. But you know what we did? We didn't remain silent. Kevin Keegan went out on the steps at St. James's Park and talked to the fans and said, "Trust me." I will get it right, trust me, and explained why it happened. And of course, he went out and within a short space of time, he signed Les Ferdinand and then Alan Shearer. So he certainly produced the goods. John Hall was coming up from London to Newcastle, and he got off at Durham and went to the training ground and confronted the fans and talked to them and explained personally what the club were doing. Give Geordie's explanations and they will believe in you and they'll give you a chance. They just want to understand. Talk to them. If
Yeah.
you got a corner shop and customers come in, you talk to them, don't you? You don't just say, give us your money, here's your paper, bugger off. You actually talk to them. And I just want Newcastle to do that because we're doing great. We've won 10 of the last 11. We're fifth in the league. We're on the verge of going to Wembley. So there's not hell on, there's not a riot, it's not like Ashley time, but just inform the public what you're doing. And if you don't like doing it like Mitchell did it the last time, which is get a load of hacks into a room and sit down and talk to them because you feel perhaps that the reports were twisted a certain way and a certain spin was put on it, then sit in a press conference at St. James's Park, which is televised, so nobody can put a spin on your words. What you say is seen. Just tell us. We're all on the same side, we're all reading up the same hymn sheet, which is let's Newcastle be successful. It's just explanations would be lovely. And then we might understand. There could have been a riot when Andy Cole was sold. There could have been a riot, but there wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, 100%. John, would you take a points deduction to buy 3 to 4 players that we need to challenge City and the Scousers? I mean, the worry is that, and I think a lot of fans worry that we would be punished more severely than a Nottingham Forest, etc. But I think that's a fallacy because I genuinely think, John, that they would have to play by the rules. They would have to follow the same guidelines that they did for Forest and that they've done for other teams.
I mean, the theory, if we take a hit to get the players we want, and we would get the players we want, but if we take 10 points, then to challenge the teams top of the league, we've got to finish a clear 10 points ahead of them to be level with them, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
It's not going to get us Europe, is it, taking a 10-point hit because we're not that good. Is any side good enough to get into Europe with a 10-point deduction? I wouldn't have thought so.
Ronnie said that they'd probably relegate us if we were 1 million over PSR. They are waiting for us to fall. Cheers, Ronnie.
But I mean, I mean, why the public don't understand what's going on is that Manchester City, I think, were charged at the same time as Hadrian was for building his wall, and we haven't had the court case yet. I mean, how about letting something happen? Forest wriggle out, Leicester wriggled out situations, but you do get the feeling that if it was us, we would get smashed. And but this financial fair play, the theory was wonderful. The practice is an absolute nightmare. And far from making it an even playing field, it is killing any clubs with genuine ambition, like Newcastle United, like Aston Villa. It's killing them.
Jeff says, question for Gibbo, who's the best crosser of the ball that you've seen at St James's Park?
Here's a wonderful expression. Yeah, and a wonderful question. Very, very good question. There's been several, and this is all off the top of my head because you haven't got time to think about it on a podcast. I thought Nobby Solano was a terrific crosser of the ball, and so did Alan Shearer, by the way. So there's somebody immediately that you would put in the rankings. Supermac, a centre forward who fed off crosses, always reckoned Stuart Barraclough of our 74-76 cup final seasons was the best crossover ball for him because he didn't hang it up, he drove it across, so he only had to get a flick on it and it was goal. The power was already in the cross. And we've had wingers who weren't particularly about crossing, like Ginola and Robert, but were brought other things to the table. But I've always liked Nobby Solano, and I think Barra was underrated because he really pinged them across. They weren't skyscrapers. Power was already on the ball.
Okay, Craig says, is there any truth, Gibbo, in Target or Longstaff going to Everton? I'd be shocked to see it, to be fair, he said.
Yes, no, I don't think so. Target has been linked hugely with Leeds over the last 48, 72 hours. I think that's a bit of ambitious thinking. I mean, from our point of view, because he is expendable, and we do need to get money if we can before it's too late and he goes for out and his value is going down by all the time he spends out of the side. Um, and I think Longstaff will not go before Monday, but I've got a feeling he'll definitely go in the summer.
Other wingers, the people have fancied in the chat, Terry Hibbert, Tommy Cassidy was a good cross with the ball, Scott Sellers, Terry Hibbert, of course, Scott Sellers, Keith Gillespie for the Barcelona game alone, and just getting back to the cult player, was what people are calling Miggy. He was a cult player.
What was that word again? Cult.
Cult, yeah. And Paul says his cult players were James Purge, Kevin Gallagher, and Antoine Sibierski. So I guess that's probably where Miggy falls, as far as that's concerned. Blue Rhythm Boys.
The bits to be put in with that trio, I can guess. But there you go. And I know what you mean by cult players. So ones that aren't blue chip, but people look at them with affection, if you like, isn't it?
Blue Rhythm Boys said, do you think Lewis Miley's ahead of Longstaff in the pecking order now than Gibbo? He says, it seems so. Longstaff seems further from the first 11 than ever before.
Yes, I think it's absolutely so. And for Sean, the way that Lewis has come back from his injury when he got the chance recently and has done well, has put Sean further down the pecking order and more or less confirms that he will probably go in the summer. And when you're Geordie playing for your hometown club and seeing your brother Matty's hopes dashed here, because he was transferred out. It's very depressing for the boy, and I feel for Sean because he's a good bench player when in the right frame of mind, and I think he's very depressed at the moment. But Lewis Miley's definitely ahead of Sean at the moment. Sean is batting about 6, isn't he? Of the 3, he's batting about 6.
Mag Debate says, has Gibbo ever played football at any level?
Not in the last 3 years, but
did you ever play Sunday leagues or?
Yeah, but as a goalkeeper, would you believe? I was excellent at picking the ball out the back of the net. I never failed to find it in the back of the net. But yes, I was actually better in sports. I was better at cricket because I was a medium pace bowler and bat would be about 4 or 5. But the advantage I had was I was left-handed, and left-footed at football is a good thing, but left-handed at cricket is exceptional as well. And it was funny because when I was a Ben, perhaps I knew I would never be good enough, but I never wanted to play for Newcastle. I always wanted to write about them, which is quite amazing. And I had little scrapbooks when I was 5, 6, and 7, made of brown paper, folded it off, and I used to cut pictures out the papers, paste them in the scrapbook, and write my own little story about Joe Harvey or Jackie Milburn when they were players, etc., underneath it. And my daughter's still got one of those scrapbooks to this day, but I always knew what I wanted to do and was lucky enough to do it. Thank God I didn't want to play football for Newcastle because my hopes would have been well dashed.
Okay, Jeff says that to what extent does the media, in your day, print media, reflect the wider fan culture rather than the reality within the club? It's quite a confusing question, Jeff. Can you simplify it, because it seems to be two questions in one?
It's a belt of that, Jeff, and I'm not certain I'm going to answer the question you're asking. But I mean, certainly media influence is huge. And I don't say that with any relish or because I'm involved with the media. It's not always good. It can be to the disadvantage if football. But anyone, I always said when I owned Gateshead, etc., etc., never underestimate the media. They can influence the public. They can have an impact on the confidence of players. They can produce an environment which the club can flourish in and find financial support, or they can kill the club stone dead. And the club always tries to control the media. Um, and especially in the days of dictators. I mean, Ashley wanted that. The old Newcastle regime before John Hall wanted that when all the directors just had the certificates handed down from father to son and ruled the club without having any idea what they were doing whatsoever. Um, and I think it is the job of the media to challenge the club and not let away from the club because in lots of ways we are the voice of the fans because we're the go-between the fans and the boardroom, the fans and the manager, the fans and the players. So it's an important role to play, but never get too full of your own importance to think you run a football because you don't. You report on it. That's the definition of the word.
Okay, good answer to the question. Where are you from, Gibbo? Says Popple Images. My family's from Ashton, Bedlington Station area, and your accent reminds me of that.
Well, yes, it probably does. I'm actually from Benwell in the West End of Newcastle. I was born and bred in Benwell, used to near on Adelaide Terrace, used to walk along to the Big Lamp and then down to St James's Park with my Uncle Frank to watch Newcastle in the late 50s. And walk back simply because we didn't have the door to get the tram or the trolley bus as it became down there. So we walked the whole way and walked back. And when Newcastle played away, alternate Saturdays, and certainly if we didn't have the money to get the bus into St James's, we didn't have the money to travel away. I used to walk straight down to the Redheugh Bridge and go across to Redheugh Park to watch Gateshead play in the Third Division North. But yeah, I'm a Benwell lad.
There we go. I feel like Eamon Andrews on This Is Your Life. That's what I feel like tonight. Jeff says, great answer. Thanks, Gibbo, for that. He says, big lamp, happy days. And Craig says, Gibbo, the pie and pea shop. And he's put some flames at the end of it. John says, same as me, a Benwell lad, says John Spence. Eric says, you should try and get Lee Ryder to join you on here, Gibbo. Be nice if you could know what fans before he attends press. If he knew what fans wanted questions asked before they went to press conferences, sometimes I think him and the journalists are way off the mark, which, I get it. I listen to the press conferences. It's all about opinions. Walk 10 miles to school, Gibbo, says Marcus. And Tom says, Gibbo, I remember when I first picked the Chronicle up and someone, Oliver, the Alan Tom, used to write up the Newcastle United headlines. Can't remember his first name. And Led says, that's the problem, Gibbo. Some of the mainstream media appear to want to create news rather than report it, as Gary V is always telling me. And Popple Images says, thanks for your memories. Good questions tonight. Just want to quickly look back at Southampton, Gibbo. I mean, I've got to be honest, it was a nerve-wracking game that to watch because, it was a potential banana skin after the hammering we got at the hands of Bournemouth, who went on to do well against Forest, of course. But, a win's a win, Gibbo. It was bounced back time. We managed to bounce back. The win was more important than the performance, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Southampton are awful. I mean, they abuse the privilege of being awful. I mean, they've got 6 points. The way they're going to end up officially the worst team in Premier League history. I mean, they were dreadful. They took the lead against us, and I wasn't worried a bit, because there was 80 minutes to go, and their defence is like a chocolate teapot. You couldn't see any resistance for 80 minutes that could stop goals going in with the firepower we've got up front with Isaac and Gordon and Murphy back on song and Tonali pushing and Bruno pushing. Yeah, it wasn't a great performance for us, but they are awful. I mean, they are dreadful. And you beat sides like those. And the only grateful thing was that the goal was early, because we had bags of time. I still got the cigar out and knocked the top off a bottle of white wine because we were still going to win the thing. And Isaac and Tonali just were a different class to anything they've seen um, in that match and in general. And it was nice to spot the lesser known warbler, Ryan Fraser, come on very late on. Obviously just played so that he could exchange niceties with Eddie Howe at the end and have a little love in, because they do adore each other, as you know. So I had a little smile at Ryan drinking in defeat.
Yeah, me too. Denise says, I guess Dubravka is like a new signing as he's now staying. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be there till the end of the season. There's no doubt about it. What did John make of the third goal against Southampton? Says Benny.
Wait on, I'm just going through that one again. It was Tonali's goal, wasn't it?
Tonali's goal, yeah.
Tonali's goal. Well, I mean, honestly, when the ball was played, it was a beautiful build-up. When the ball was played through to Tonali, had I been a player, I would have just turned around and run back to the halfway line for the kickoff, because you knew he was going to stick it in the back of the net. He's got the vision and the coolness and the calmness um, that he was going to finish. He can do a bit of everything, the boy. He puts out fires. He's ready there. He's a firefighter. He puts out fires all over the place. He can play. He's great on the front foot going forward. He's got super wide vision, and he's calm as a cucumber when he finishes. At the moment, Isaac is getting all the headlines, and rightly so, because he's got 19 goals so far this season, and he got 25 last season, and he scores and he looks sublime. But that means that Tonali, outside of Geordieland, is almost going under the radar in the rest of the country. How good is he? But everybody's so obsessed about Isaac because goals are the lifeblood of football, and he deserves all the accolades he gets. But how good's Tonali? I mean, he's a breath of fresh air. He is James Bond and everything else rolled into one, isn't he? The Italian stallion, the lot like.
Yeah, beautiful goal. Can't stop those unless the midfielder tracks Tonali from the start. Never looked like he was going to miss from the minute he picked it up. Lads, a class act. Mark says, I was a bit disappointed that we coasted the Southampton game out. Need to boost the goal difference. It's so tight up there and will be important at the crunch end of the season. Sandro is my player of the season, says Yvonne. Let's look ahead to Fulham at the weekend. Newcastle kicking off 3 o'clock on Saturday, and no TV coverage, of course, of that. Harvey Barnes, Jamal Lascelles are both out. Availability of Callum Wilson, it was assumed that he would be back for the Arsenal game next week. Will he be back for the weekend? Let's hope so. Let's hope he can get a run out in that game. Harry Wilson, Reece Nelson, Kenny Tete are all unavailable due to various ailments for the visitors. And ahead of their visit to Newcastle, the Cottagers lost 1-0 at home to Manchester United on Sunday evening. Potential banana skin this game. They've got a decent away record. On the road this season, Marco Silva's side have won 4, Forest, Palace, Chelsea and Leicester. They've drawn 4, Ipswich, Everton, Spurs and Liverpool. They've lost 3, Manchester United, Manchester City and West Ham. Fulham have scored twice in each of the last 4 Premier League away games, with 7 of the 8 goals coming in the second half of the games. Chris Kavanagh is once again refereeing at St James's Park. And that is following on from the 2-1 Premier League win at Wolves and the 2-0 Carabao Cup victory against Chelsea at SJP. And on VAR, it's a new name, it's Alex Chilowich. How are you feeling about this game, John?
Well, I mean, how many bananas did Geordies eat? Because we're always walking on banana skins. Like, I mean, every game, I think it's a Geordie trait that we all think that good things must come to an end, and they did, of course, against Bournemouth. I think we'll win the game. I don't think that Fulham will be able to live with our power, with our press, and with our energy. Yeah, they've had a decent record until they got unstuck 1-0 at home to Manchester United, and what was a dreadful game. And yes, we owe them one big time because they beat us 3-1 at Craven Cottage in mid-September. But I'll tell you what, this current Newcastle team, which has won 10 of the last 11, is nothing like the side that lost it down at Craven Cottage in September. Because if you look at that side, Steve, both our England fullbacks, Livramento and Hall, didn't play. Tonali hadn't been established as our midfield supremo at that stage. Hall, Livramento, and Tonali only got on as subs. They didn't start, but the three of them are big timers now. And Isaac, believe it or not, was in a drought. He'd scored once in 6 games, including Fulham. He never notched in the next 4, and then he went on a sensational run, which has got him up to 19 goals now. So our top players, Livramento, Hall, Tonali, and Isaac, didn't out in that game. They'll do something in this game. Newcastle to win.
All right, I'm going for a draw in this game. I'm going to go for a 2-2.
I tell you what a miserable article
Sorry,
it turned out to be.
I think this is going to be a tough game. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I'm not convinced Newcastle have got out with that little. I wouldn't call it a rut. I just think that they're not firing on all cylinders.
How can it be a rotten not firing all cylinders when they've won 10 of the last 11?
I know it sounds stupid, but the performance level against Southampton, I don't think was great. I think if they played,
I hope the performance is not great and we'll win again.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I just think listening to Fulham's record this weekend, they're coming here with a game plan. I think it'll be tougher than people think. But I'm going to stick with a draw, and I hope I'm wrong. Got to ask you about Arsenal because that'll be the Wednesday night game before we come back on air next Thursday. 8 o'clock kick-off live on Sky Sports. Newcastle 2-0 up from the first leg. They've got a big game this weekend as well. They play Manchester City on Sunday. Jesus, Saka and Ben White will all be unavailable though for the game against Newcastle. Might get a few injuries at the weekend, who knows? But they are struggling at the moment for forward players, John. Can Newcastle get this over the line on Wednesday night?
Well, we'll never have a better chance, will we, as we're 2-0 up. I mean, this is a huge game on Wednesday night, and it is a beaches book. There's no question about that. It's a tough game, Steve, and it's no pushover. By Jove, it isn't. And none of us think it is. But it's not as tough as the game down at the Emirates, mate, and we won that 2-0. And by the way, we beat Arsenal up here 1-0 this season, and we beat Arsenal up here 1-0 last season. So, we can get the job done. It will be tough. I think that'll be closer on the 90 minutes than the Fulham one will be. It will be tough, but surely we can't blow a 2-goal lead over the next 90 minutes. Yes, we can, but we've got to defend well. We've got to get the job done. We cannot have our bubble burst. I mean, can you imagine if we got the 2-2 draw with Fulham that you're forecasting, and we didn't get through against Arsenal? The complexion will have changed a little bit by the time we go to Birmingham in the FA Cup, won't it?
Maybe it's a bit of Stockholm syndrome for me. I think that's maybe it. John's asking how we're feeling, and Denise is saying she's a bit more nervous. But I'm more confident for the Arsenal game than I am for the Fulham game at the weekend. I've got to be perfectly honest. I think the lads will be thinking about Wednesday. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. We could do with a player coming in before the game on Saturday. That's what we could do with.
Yeah, that won't happen. But yes, and by the way, if we were talking, they might get injuries in Manchester City. Stephen, don't talk about injuries. Can you imagine us getting injuries against Fulham to any of our blue chip players?
Yeah,
that would change the picture a little bit, wouldn't it? I'm taking us to beat Fulham, and I'm taking us to get through against Arsenal. You know what I mean? It could be a draw on the night, but to get through, we've got a 2-0 lead already. So I'm looking for that. And then we'll go down to Birmingham in the FA Cup. It's amazing, isn't it? In 1 week, we're going to play in all the 3 competitions that we're in this season. Premier League, League Cup, FA Cup. Fabulous week ahead. Pivotal time in our season. Absolutely pivotal. Front foot acceleration. No injuries. The only thing that worries me is when I look at the bench.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, John. As always, look forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully we are at a final, by then. We are playing out with the ads. I'll be back 4:30 tomorrow with the amigos, and see you next week, John. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. A big thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email them at beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. You can find them at their website, media-arts.co.uk. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and your other podcast providers. If you want to help support the channel, hit the thumb up, which is the like button. Click share to share to your other social medias. Click join to join the channel. And click the subscribe button. We've also got links in our description for buy us a coffee and to be a Patreon member. Some events coming up. An afternoon with Sir Les Ferdinand, 6th of April, 12 till 4. Tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. No Covers takes place at the Cluny, Lilac Lane, Ryder and the Chris Norris Band. Tickets from theclooney.com or by telephone in 0191 230 4474. An evening with Steve Howie and Steve Watson, hosted by Joe Allen, takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 27th of June. Tickets for that are from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on the 23rd of January 2026. Box office 0844 246 1000 or website tynetheatreandoperahouse.tv. An evening with Bad Manners takes place on Friday the 30th of January 2026 and tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainers 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, available from newcastlelegends.com.